5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
What do you think, Marge? All I need is a title.
For those of you who have not followed my channel, or for those who do not follow happenings on the internet and such, this is Riley J. Dennis, a lefty, lesbian, trans woman who is also an LGBTQ+ and socialist activist. I point this out because she has incredible reach and influence in the online community. While her YouTube channel has only roughly 68,000 subscribers, her latest video, the one we are going to review today, has about 9.7 million views. That is a lot of people hanging on the word of this leftist greenophile wacko. And of course, Riley has fallen head over heels in love with the Green New Deal, or GND. The Green New Deal is a series of proposals that collectively would wreck the American and therefore the world economy by extension. So far, the proposal has received the support of roughly 60 out of the 435 members of the U.S. House, and while its House supporter, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has received praise for her energy on this measure, House Majority Leader Nancy Pelosi did not specifically endorse the proposal, and since she is the person who determines when things will be brought before the U.S. House for debate, without her support, the Green New Deal is going nowhere. In the U.S. Senate, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is working to bring the proposal to an early vote, much to the chagrin of its Senate sponsor, Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey, who criticized McConnell for rushing the vote. Of course, the idea is that this proposal gets brought for a vote, it gets voted down because every sane member of the U.S. Senate votes against it, and a clear message is sent. We will not stand for wacko proposals that would only serve to devastate the American economy on the altar of a nebulous and non-proven concept such as global climate change. I doubt this will stop the sycophants such as Riley, who doesn't even live in the United States, but apparently he has no problems telling us what we should pass into law. She also demonstrates a complete separation of herself from scientific truth by her support for these proposals. While her lefty brand of bigotry usually stays confined to social issues, where she was mocked for releasing a video that basically said that if you don't date trans women, you are bigoted against them, in this case, her toxic Marxist views are dangerous because of her internet influence. Remember, this video has already gotten about 9.7 million views. So let's review this steaming heap of madness, and we will demonstrate why Riley J. Dennis, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ed Markey, and the other supporters of the Green Bum Deal are simply out of their minds, and why the proposal itself is an insult to intelligence that needs to be voted down and quickly forgotten.
Hey everyone, my name is Riley, and today we're going to be talking about the Green New Deal, which I still struggle to say quickly. So the GND is a resolution stating goals for Congress to achieve by 2030.
So keep in mind, folks, that all this stuff has to be passed within the next 11 years, assuming it all stays on track.
Mainly to do with the environment, but also other issues. It's massively progressive, and it's something that we all need to get behind if we want to fight climate change. And we should want to fight climate change because it will literally make this planet uninhabitable for us.
Let me put this out there for you straight. Climate change happens. The world's climate has always changed and has been doing so for the entire lifespan of the planet. However, human-caused catastrophic climate change that the East Anglia Group falsified their data on, that the IPCC bought hook, line, and sinker, and that people such as Riley and other fearmongers are pushing is simply bullshit and should not be used as the basis for policy.
So today, I want to talk specifically about what the GND is trying to do, because it's important that we're educated about what we're advocating for. Legislation that tackles climate change is important, but we have to know how it is doing that. So first things first, this is not a bill. This isn't a piece of legislation. It's not doing anything on its own. It's a resolution, which is just a statement saying, we plan to achieve these things through future legislation. So if all goes according to plan, a lot of smaller pieces of legislation would be proposed that tackle different problems. And they would fall under the umbrella of being a part of the GND. So don't expect the GND to get super specific.
Yeah, because no one wants to see concrete bullshit socialist proposals.
That's what the future bills would be for. Right now, the GND is intentionally vague. It's basically a mission statement saying, here is what we want to do. And then we hash out the how to do it and the specifics of each individual bill. Realistically, those bills aren't going to get anywhere for the next 2 years because even if they pass the House,
Which they won't, because Nancy Pelosi does not support AOC and her laughably stupid proposal. This means that the Green New Deal won't be brought up for consideration, much less get passed through the U.S. House.
the Republican-controlled Senate is likely to vote them down. And even if by some miracle it did get through the Senate, Trump would have to sign it. So depending on what happens in 2020, we could start seeing GND legislation being put into place.
Another reason to support our president in 2020.
With the goal being to accomplish a lot of major points by 2030. And given how climate change is increasingly exacerbating natural disasters and causing the sea level to rise, we can't afford to wait any longer than that.
And some of the models suggest to Dr. Maslowski that there is a 75% chance that the entire North Polar ice cap during some of the summer months could be completely ice-free within the next 5 to 7 years.
So a major part of the GND happening in 2020 is electing Democrats to Congress and the presidency. Without that, the people who believe in this plan won't have the power to do anything about it.
It seems like you don't just need Democrats. You need insane people to win elections in Congress, because normal, sane Democrats might be lefty, but they are not crazy enough to support the complete non-reality that is the Green New Deal. You need to elect people who will support the Green New Deal.
Between now and 2020, hopefully we'll see a bunch of different GND bills and have a chance to analyze and debate them before there's a real chance to enact them when the next Congress comes in.
Yes, because as we are seeing from the reactions of people in Congress, all the steaming, rat-infested pile of bullshit that is the Green New Deal needs is exposure to the light of day. Yes, let's have as many bills as you want, Riley. In fact, it's possibly a great idea that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell wants to bring the proposal to a vote soon. Let's allow everyone to take a good long look at this complete train wreck of a policy.
So, with all of that said, let's talk about what this resolution says. In the beginning, it basically makes a justification for why it exists, by listing a bunch of the ways that climate change is hurting the US. And citing a 2018 report by the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it says that to prevent climate change from becoming even more destructive, we need to reach net zero carbon emissions from human sources by 2050.
Yeah, because introducing legislation into the United States where we are actually outdoing the nations in the climate accords and cleaning the environment is the best way to go about fighting global climate change. Hey Riley, why not preach this message to the people of mainland China?
It goes on to list other ways that climate change is damaging the world, including its effects disproportionately harming marginalized communities like communities of color, indigenous communities, and poor communities.
Yeah, because for some reason a thunderstorm hits poor people worse than it hits rich people. I get it.
It even says that climate change is a threat to national security as natural disasters worsen around the world and destabilize other countries.
I'm not buying the national security bit here. It's pretty weak. What are we supposed to do? Point guns at the hurricanes and chase them away?
Then it goes on to list several other crises that the US is having right now, including stagnating hourly wages, massive income inequality, and a racial wealth divide. Then it basically says that the federal government has the chance to do something on a New Deal-sized scale that could both address climate change and many of the other issues plaguing the country.
Perhaps Riley knows more about our system of government than I think. After all, it's a perfectly good strategy to get something you want done. Put the thing you want inside a bill that is chock full of pork and fat and government waste, fraud, and abuse. Then, while the politicians are busy cutting out the pork, your original idea just might get through.
That's when it lists its 5 main goals, which I'll summarize in plain English, but you're welcome to go read the resolution for yourself. I'll link it in the description below. So those 5 goals are basically: 1. Get to net zero greenhouse gas emissions in a fair way. 2. Create millions of good, well-paying, secure jobs. 3. Invest in modern infrastructure. 4. Ensure that everyone has access to clean air, water, and other necessities. And 5. Promote justice for and repair the historic oppression of marginalized communities.
Yeah, because that's a thing that actually happens in today's America. some idiot African Americans who fancy themselves the original Jews of the Promised Land, and a wacko Native American valor thief verbally abuse a bunch of Catholic school kids in Washington, D.C., but it's the African Americans and the Native American who's marginalized. Somehow I don't think so.
Those are the 5 big main goals of the GND. It's essentially stop climate change and do it in a way that benefits the people. It goes on to say that these goals can be achieved through a 10-year national mobilization, and it gets a little bit more specific about how those goals should be achieved. It emphasizes that funding and investment should go towards community-led projects, because local communities know the best way to protect themselves against climate change. It says the federal government needs to invest heavily in renewable energy sources and the infrastructure to deploy those renewable sources.
In other words, print money, because fuck inflation and fuck global economic stability.
And it needs to make sure those sources are affordable for everyone. It says we need to upgrade all the existing buildings in the country to maximize their energy efficiency and energy sources.
Shut up! That's just morons! I'm surrounded by morons!
Go back and listen to that again, please.
And it needs to make sure those sources are affordable for everyone. It says we need to upgrade all the existing buildings in the country to maximize their energy efficiency and energy sources.
So apparently the new Green Deal proposes that every single building in the country be torn down and then rebuilt using solar panels and green technology. How moronic is that?
It says we need to support family farms and invest in sustainable farming practices to reduce or eliminate the pollution coming from the agricultural sector.
This proposal is not bad. Increasing the efficiency of our farms is always a good move, especially since it would allow us to produce more food, feed more of the world's population, and drive us even further into food self-sufficiency, making the prices we pay for food drop even lower. The rationale of doing this to reduce pollution from farms is complete bullshit, but the idea itself is still a good one.
It says we need to overhaul our public transportation system to make it zero emission and affordable. And it specifically says that we need to invest in high-speed rail, which, oh my god, we really do. Quick note before I cover the rest of this resolution, if you're American and you've never left the country, I think it would blow your mind how much better public transportation works in like every other place except the US. Like, most of the US has really been designed with cars in mind, and it's life-changing to go to a city where there's a solid public transportation system and you realize that there's a better way to do things. Imagine the US having a high-speed rail system to go from LA to SF in a couple hours, or even to go cross-country. It could happen, and it would fundamentally change the way we travel, especially by cutting down on flights that use a lot of fossil fuels. Okay, sorry, back to the resolution. I just really love public transportation.
First off, I just love it when you get all orgasmic, Riley. Kind of like the reaction of the Marxist and socialists in this country, who are salivating over the prospect of taking even more and more of our national economy. However, to your specific point here, when is the next monorail from Los Angeles to Hawaii leaving? How about the one from Seattle to Tokyo? How are you going to build the infrastructure needed to put a rail track across an ocean that is thousands of feet deep, you fool?
So the GND also says that we need to restore natural ecosystems that have been destroyed and work to protect those that are endangered or fragile.
We already have laws doing that.
It says we need to clean up hazardous waste sites.
We already have laws doing that.
And we need to promote the international exchange of technology and expertise when it comes to climate change, because we're all in this together. And it says that the US should become a leader in this area so that other countries can follow its lead.
We already do this too. In fact, despite not being involved in the Paris Climate Accords, the United States already outpaces the participants of that agreement in pollution controls and environmental cleanup. So, way to be late to the party, you fuckwit.
It emphasizes again that marginalized communities need to be consulted at every step of the way. And it says that we need to ensure that the people benefit from the economic boom that will come from so much investment, not corporations.
Are we going to consult them before or after we rip their houses down to refit them with green energy and solar panels? In reality, we already do consult with people on projects that involve them, for the most part. One of the many problems with this proposal is that it emphasizes employment opportunities and investment in communities while ignoring the chaos that other aspects of the Green New Deal would foist upon the economy of America. Will these communities receive the investment opportunities before or after every building in the place is torn down and replaced?
Then it says we need to provide higher education to everyone, with an emphasis on people from marginalized communities so that they can be equal participants in the GND.
So, not only free higher education to anyone who wants it, but especially a lot of free college education for anyone not white and probably not white and male. And apparently, Riley figures that marginalized communities, read ethnic minorities, do not have an equal opportunity in our capitalist system, and therefore we need to keep on supporting faux equality measures such as affirmative action in order to even things out. While we are evening things out, how about any disparity in the racial makeup of things like pro sports? How about we enforce some racially based affirmative action in the NFL, for example? It is things like this that make me think that Riley does not have a firm grasp on economics, or at least how economics work in the United States. Where there is outright discrimination, we confront and address it. However, the reason the pro sports players are where they are, and the reason they are getting paid a lot more money than, say, I would get, is because they are way better at their jobs, and they provide a product that is in high demand, in part due to the need for professionals to play the sports at that level, and in part due to the fact that the product is limited by the number of games, the number of seats, and any limits on broadcast markets, just as an example.
It emphasizes the importance of hiring local workers who are part of a union. And it says that we need to guarantee good jobs with a right to unionize. It says we need to improve workplace safety and anti-discrimination laws.
We already have laws doing that.
Stop the transfer of jobs overseas and not allow companies to monopolize entire sectors.
That might work in the larger areas, but in small towns, nah. Sometimes you only have one or two options for a good or service. Is Riley going to force businesses to open where the markets will not support them? Will she pay for them to do so, and will she pay for the unemployment benefits when those workers lose their jobs when that business fails?
It says that the US government needs to obtain consent from indigenous people for any decisions that affect them. They need to honor all treaties with them, and they need to protect the sovereignty of indigenous lands. And lastly, it says that all people of the United States should be provided with high-quality healthcare, affordable housing, economic security, and access to clean air and water.
Yeah, because we don't already have access to most of this stuff. And since we don't have access, the government is supposed to pay for us to get access. And how exactly is the government supposed to pay for all this? If you said, print lots of money, you'd be correct.
That's a lot of stuff for what many see as just a thing about climate change. It's actually about way more than climate change. It's about repairing this country in a bunch of different ways, and a big part of that is climate change.
And the rest of it is a big heaping mound of socialism designed to destroy the capitalist system that we have in this country, while destroying large areas of the country by eliminating the fossil fuels industries, tearing down and rebuilding the entire country, replacing cars and planes with railways and monorails, and paying for all of this by crashing the world economy and attempting to soak the rich. Sounds like a proven and sound plan to me.
Because it's already wreaking havoc on the globe and on the US specifically. But the way that it chooses to address climate change, by ensuring that marginalized communities are consulted, by creating good jobs, by making sure everyone has healthcare and clean water, all of that stuff doesn't necessarily have to be a part of a climate change resolution. But it is here, and I think that's a big deal. The GND is very progressive, and it's actually gaining support among Democrats thanks to the hard work put in by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and so many other progressives who continue to push the Democrats to the left.
If the Democrats are pushed any further to the left, they will fall off the spectrum. As it is, they are barely electable anyways. You expect them to face off against Donald Trump with this sort of socialist, chaotic bullshit lefty plan? There is not a lot of support for the Green New Deal. It is getting attention only so that everyone, including Democrats, can laugh at it. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has already removed some things from the Green New Deal website, including the fact sheet which explains that the entire plan will be paid for by printing money and raising taxes on the rich. Of course, I'm not sure Riley is familiar with any of this, since she has her head so far up her socialist progressive ass.
There's still a ways to go, for sure, but it's already got 60 House co-sponsors and 9 Senate co-sponsors. Push Democrats left, and it's going to ensure that we end up with a presidential candidate who's ready to take big steps towards fighting climate change. So don't think of the GND solely as a climate change resolution. Think of it as a massive community project to improve life for everyone. At the end of it, we could have pollution-free air, high-quality public transportation, safe and well-paying jobs, a right to higher education, a right to quality healthcare, and so much more. This could change so much, but only if we get behind the GND. So when you're voting in local elections, Republicans, which I know you will be because if you got this far in the video, you must really care about politics, make sure you're voting for candidates who support the GND. If your representative or senator hasn't voiced their support for it yet, call their office and tell them you want them to support it. We've got 2 years to build support for the GND, and we cannot wait any longer than that to act on climate change.
All right. To summarize, the Green Deal is a preposterous set of policy proposals that we have shown has minimal support within Congress, and for good reason. Some of these proposals are not even physically possible. Others will wreck the American economy, either through needless gutting and rebuilding of all the buildings in the country, or the destruction of large areas of the nation's fossil industry, such as most of Wyoming, large swaths of Texas, and the upper Ohio River Valley, and West Virginia, to name a few areas that would be rendered virtually economic basket cases if the Green New Deal got anywhere close to being passed. People such as Riley J. Dennis, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Ed Markey, amongst others, simply support this because they've bought into a couple of lefty agendas. One is socialism, which seeks to bring large sections of the national economy under the sway and control of the U.S. government, where resources can then be doled back out to those persons found worthy of government help. And folks, after large areas of the country no longer have a viable economy, there will be a lot of people needing the government's help. The second agenda is the Green Climate Change Agenda, which seeks to have the United States throw money at other countries for investment in greener climate change infrastructure. One problem is that there is simply no way to control what happens to this money. The wackos are simply going to trust that corrupt regimes in Africa and Asia will use our money for the purposes that it was intended for. Hell, even if they do use the money for green agenda purposes, it frees up other money to continue to feed the rampant corruption that plagues the third world. Fearmongers such as Al Gore have been bitching since the 1960s about the perils of an upcoming global warming. The so-called researchers at East Anglia University drank so much of the Kool-Aid that they falsified their own data, which the IPCC then used as the basis for their own reports and recommendations. Because of this, none of the reports are accurate, and the science is not settled, as pretty much anyone who is a follower of global climate change is convinced. And finally, of course, we have idiots such as Riley J. Dennis, who will not be affected when the United States wrecks its own economy, except for when the world economy collapses roughly 5 minutes after that. Riley has fooled people into thinking that she is a relatively educated person, but sycophantic worship of the Green New Deal just proves that there is little in between her ears except perhaps air and shit. Who knows?